Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen here with life coach Cindy Chavez. Today is Wednesday, July the 1st, 2020, first day of July, 4 p.m. New York time, and wherever you are in the world, thanks for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And Cindy, I've been telling everybody else, but I'll let you know the app is half released. We got the versions for the PC and Mac done, still working on the big ones, which are the Android and iPhone versions. And I think I actually figured something out that's been kind of haunting me for about the last month. I'm not sure. I figured it out about 5 minutes before the show, so I haven't tested it yet. You get into that high vibe place, and all of a sudden stuff opens up, and that's what happens when I'm getting ready to do a show, right? So
right. Oh.
Yeah.
That's great.
I don't know if it's true, but it would make sense that the thing I thought of is true because it's always little simple things that we overlook. And that's what this one is. This is a little simple thing that's very easy to overlook. So, crossing my fingers and toes.
Yeah, let's hope. And I hadn't thought about it until right before the show when we had the little what's going on moment.
Yeah. We had our own little moment here. It was crazy.
Right, that Mercury's in retrograde, and I don't, some people say, I don't buy into that. But there is an idea that when Mercury is retrograde, that there are a lot of communication problems and electronic problems, and astrologers will tell you not to sign contracts during that time because of these kind of communication mix-up. And because Mercury rules communication, most of our communication now is digital, right? Virtual, online, telephones, electronic stuff. And a bunch of people in my online room that I run were all complaining about it, saying they could not believe how many things were going wrong with computers and with, different things. And I told them that Saturday my husband was working outside, and he opened the door, and I was in the back of the house, and he yelled to me. He said, "Is Mercury in retrograde?" And I said, "Yeah." And then there were a string of words I won't repeat. And he had been outside. He was listening to his earbuds. He was working in the yard with the new weed eater mower or something that takes batteries that, these batteries cost $100 a piece.
Oh my.
It was almost brand new. The battery died. Then the earphones went out. Then something else stopped working. And then the computers. And it was like, oh my goodness. So sometimes, even though that feels like a real drag to have things not working, the way I tend to look at it is kind of like, oh well, Mercury's in retrograde. I'm not going to get too worried about this. Like, it'll all pan out, instead of being super frustrated, even though it's super frustrating.
It is. It's very frustrating. But like you say, you can always turn it into a beach day, or you can turn it into a park day or something like that.
Just say, you know what, I'm going to walk away from this right now. And that's what a couple of people in my room actually said that they did, is when their computer or whatever just started, they said, okay, I'm going to walk away from this. And then, like you said, you walk away and you cool off a little bit and then come back and then things start to work out. So, life on Earth. Welcome to Earth.
I remember one time about 2 years ago, we did a show about Mercury in retrograde because I was, not really a convert. And by the end of the show, I was largely convinced, not entirely. But the thing that has kind of held me back all these years is when I looked more closely, I found that Mercury is in retrograde about a third of the time. I said, I'm not sure I'm willing to give up that much of my time to being frustrated by electronics. So I think I'm going to rethink this a little bit.
Yeah, a few times a year, Mercury is in retrograde for a few weeks. But one of the things that is good to remember is the retrograde, the RE at the beginning of retrograde. It means that Mercury seems to be moving backwards. Of course, it's not, but it's just in line with the other planets. So words that start with RE, like review, relax, and a lot of times if I'm working on a project, I take that time to not launch something new, but to go back and do the review of it, do some editing, figure out how I can make it better. It's like a very chill time to do things like that. And then I always joke that, reboot is one of those words too.
Yep. This is
right
true.
before about an hour and a half ago, the printer was like, "What's wrong with the printer now?" And my husband said, "Did we try turning it on and turning it back off?" Because
Little things, right?
the tech joke is, have you turned it off and turned it back on again?
Oh,
Sometimes
yes.
that's all it takes, right? Reboot it.
It's true. I mean, it's the tech advisor's best friend. Reboot the computer. It'll fix all kinds of stuff.
Right? I don't do it often enough. I don't reboot my computer often enough, and I also don't restart my phone. Turn it off completely, and sometimes
It's less important with a phone, but it is important with any electronic device.
Yeah.
They're happier. They operate better when they're starting from scratch.
Every once in a while I'll realize my phone's a little weird and I'll think, gosh, I don't think I've turned it off for 2 months or something. So I'll restart it and everything's better.
Yeah.
I have to keep that in mind with our new app coming out. I'm really excited about it.
I'm excited too. I'll be really excited when I get the Android and iPhone versions out, because those are the really, really big ones. But,
right.
As you were saying that Mercury in retrograde is an optical illusion, which it is, something was occurring to me as you said that. I realized, well, that's not the only illusion we deal with. Time and space is an illusion.
Right.
I mean, that alone should tell you something.
We were talking about that last week, right? We were talking about the idea that somebody was talking, we had a conversation going around signs and synchronicities and all these things. And then we were just talking about creating something in the future. And we said, I know what it was. The whole conversation was about manifesting something instantly.
Oh, yes.
Because somebody asked a question. At the end of the question, it was I want to know how to manifest instantly.
Right.
And we discovered at the end of the conversation, well, if time is not linear, and everything is really happening at once, then we are actually manifesting everything instantly.
This
we
is
just
true.
don't experience it for 25 years.
It is absolutely true. In fact, yesterday, Dan Mangena and I, with Alex watching on kind of in astonishment, she was having trouble, I think, keeping up with all of our thought patterns. But Dan and I were doing a thing about the nature of time, because he had expressed something last Thursday that is a very common thing to express. Most of the great teachers in this field have used this idea. Neville Goddard, who we did books on, expressed this idea, the idea that all creation has already been completed, and that whenever we are manifesting something, we're not truly creating it, we're summoning it, we're calling it to ourselves. And I've always had a little bit of a resistance to that. I got to thinking about it after he made his comment last week, and expressed right there on the spot that that's not the way I really think about it. And he was curious, but it was at the end of the show. You know how that goes. You're running out of time, so I kind of held it over to this week. And as I thought about it, I understood why I was so confused about it. Why I was so confused is because all of our language is based on time.
Yes.
All of our words, all of our sentences, they're based on time. We express things in terms of time. And I know that Daniel and the teachers and so forth, they're all trying to express something that is a non-time concept, but they're limited by the fact that we have to express things in terms of time. So I pointed out, well, it would therefore be just as accurate or just as inaccurate to say everything is about to be created, rather than everything has already been created. It's just coming at it from two different directions. You're basically trying to express now.
Yeah. Right. You're right about that. That's like the language method E prime, where you don't ever use the verb to be. So there's no I am, and it's very weird, but it's very cool.
Well, it's also very difficult for sentence structure. I mean, you try to express something without that, and okay, how does this sentence go together again?
But you're right, tense. That is a huge part of language, is the tense. And so if we take that out, everything is happening now. And
to make it even more confusing, we understand now in terms of a timeline.
Yeah, right.
So we know what we're trying to talk about. Mm-hmm. We know we're talking about this instant that is timeless.
Yeah.
But all of our words describe it in a way that involves time.
Right, because if we say now, we are talking about on a timeline that's not then and it's not later. It's now.
Yeah, it's right in the middle. The past is over there, future's over there.
Right. It is. Yeah. It is hard to get your mind around the concept of time being non-linear, for sure.
It really is.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was digging around looking at things to talk about. I saw an interesting post. It started off really, really well, and then it kind of got a little bit disappointing for me.
Okay.
But I thought it would be a good talking point for us because Wednesdays, of course, are relationship Wednesdays. And this one is ultimately all about two kinds of relationships. So
Okay.
I'll read it and you'll hear the first part sounds really good. It says, she says, I am resetting my manifestation technique starting with self-love. I have never fully experienced self-love, and being an LOA follower for more than 10 years now, this is the first time I want to do self-love. That part sounds really good. This is the part where it starts to slide off a little bit. I want to do self-love to manifest my soulmate back from a third-party situation. I'm scared and anxious all the time. I need big-time support and good vibes and guidance from you all. Any suggestions to begin with? And that's her post on Facebook.
Well, the really great thing about this is that is the goal. Not the end goal of getting someone back, but the goal of self-love, the intention, I guess I should say, right? And this is not the same situation, but I'm going to use it as an example that when I was in a relationship that wasn't working, a long-term relationship, over 2-decade relationship, I recognized at some point that part of it had to do with my self-love or lack thereof. Now, if anybody would have asked me, I would have said, oh, of course I love myself, right? And I did a lot of things that people would point to and say self-love. I took good care of myself, right? But the thing that I wasn't doing was I was allowing someone to treat me in a way that wasn't, especially great. I often use this example. It's like if I had at one time I had a little dog that I love so much. If you see us on video, you see my little dog in the picture in the background. If a neighbor would have come over to introduce themselves and then come in and then said some crappy thing to my dog, I would have said, you're going to have to go. And yet, this person in my life would say crappy things to me, right? Why was I tolerating something that I wouldn't even let someone get away with my dog?
Right.
And so here's what I am getting to the point. So here's what I did. I just started making some boundaries. So this is self-love. Boundaries are an act of love because boundaries at their very basic is just to tell someone what's okay and what's not okay, right? Very simple. And to communicate that to whoever it is that you need to communicate it to with love and with compassion, but just knowing this isn't about you and your behavior, but it's about me and what I need. And it's not okay for whatever it is. It's not okay for you to speak to me that way. It's not okay for you to call me after 10 at night, whatever it is.
Right.
When you start putting those boundaries into effect, when I started putting those boundaries into effect, it did not sit well with the other party. And they decided they were done. They did not want to be in a relationship where there was equanimity, where there was equality, where we were both treating each other with kindness and respect, right? And so I say this to the person asking this question or asking for help, is that when you start giving yourself the self-love, when you start giving yourself the love, the cherishing, the respect, the nurturing that you actually think you want to come from outside of you, from that other person or people, when you start giving it to yourself, it will start showing up from other people. It might not show up from that other specific person that you're wanting it from. But at that point, you're not going to care because you are going to be so loved up from loving yourself and from the universe reflecting that love back to you from other people. And maybe either from other romantic suitors, from other close friends, from neighbors, from people in your life. That love will come shining back at you and you'll feel no deficit of love. You won't feel like, oh, I need this person back so much because you'll be full. You'll be full of love from yourself and from everyone around you or from a good amount of people around you. And the people that don't want to give you that love, it won't matter. It really won't matter. I know that might be hard to believe when your heart feels broken and you're really wanting someone back. But I always ask this question. I've asked this question to myself during that time. And that was 25 years ago. No, 15 years ago, right? So it's been a while. Mm-hmm. But now I am so loved and appreciated and in a wonderful relationship. I would never go back to that.
Yeah.
And that's the question I asked myself at the time.
That's a great question.
I was asking myself the same questions this person is asking. What can I do?
Mm-hmm.
How do I get him to care about me again?
Yeah.
How do I fix this? What do I change? What can I do? What kind of support can I get? And then I asked myself the question, the magic question. Why do I want to be with someone who doesn't want to be with me?
Yeah, well, there's that one too.
Why do I want to be with this person who'd rather be over there with that other person or whatever? And we didn't have a third party in our situation, but it was like they clearly have said they don't want to be with me anymore. Why do I want that? Mm-hmm. And then it hit me. I asked myself, what do I want? I want somebody who's wild about me. I want somebody who wants to be with me all the time. I want somebody who loves me and cherishes me and respects me and thinks I'm brilliant. You know, that's what I want.
Sure.
And that's what I have.
Yeah.
And it's out there for you. Whoever you are, you're looking, it's out there for you. And it's probably not that guy that got away or that girl that got away. It's probably not. Because if they wanted to be with you, they'd be with you. That might sound hard and that might not feel good to hear, but.
Well, even if it does turn out to be that is the person, it's not going to work until you change how you feel about yourself.
Yes.
And that means working on yourself.
Right. Well, when you recognize that you are whole, right? You know that whole Jerry Maguire movie with the "You Complete Me"? You know, that was such a famous line in that movie.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there is no one that's going to complete you.
Right.
You are complete. So when you realize that you're whole and complete, then you can meet another person who is whole and complete. And the two of you whole people can make up a whole couple. But you don't need someone to complete you. And I think that generally when someone's trying to get someone back, that's what's happening is they feel something's missing. We have memories of what it was like in the good times. And, most relationships, even terrible relationships, usually have a moment or two that are great.
Otherwise, they wouldn't have any kind of duration at all. They disappear quickly.
Right. And so, we hold on to those things sometimes. And it's all about you recognizing your wholeness, you being willing to love yourself, you being willing to recognize that you can have an amazing life all by yourself. It doesn't mean that that's what you want, but when you get to the place where you're loving your life so much and you're recognizing your wholeness, you don't feel like you have to have someone else complete you. That's usually when the person shows up.
That's it. That's exactly what happens. Yeah. In fact, I love the way you phrased it. I'm not sure if I could repeat exactly what you said, but the gist of it was that when you do the work, when you start loving yourself the way you would want somebody else to love you, when you start treating yourself the way you would want somebody else to treat you, and when you recognize that you haven't been treating yourself that way and that this is actually something you deserve from yourself, an interesting thing happens about these SPs that are out there. They suddenly become less interesting. Yeah. That's what I found. I found that out in ways that kind of surprised me. But the more that I ended up growing, the more that I ended up being the person that I needed to be to myself, the less interested I was in the ones from the past. They just, it was kind of like they almost faded away in my memory. I mean, they didn't. I remember who they are. It's just all the charge that was attached to them, all of the strong feeling, that desperate feeling of, oh yes, like you say, that person completes me, all that kind. It went away because I was completing myself. And so that need wasn't there anymore.
That's what, when I went through my divorce, it was a really, all these people say, oh, we had a friendly divorce or an amicable divorce, whatever. Yeah, no, I didn't have that. And I wish I could say I did, but it wasn't. It was nasty.
I always wonder about the people who say that, but that's another topic. We'll get to that one another day.
Actually, no, I actually can say that I coached a couple through a divorce that had a long-term marriage, college age, I think, children, and they recognized that for the 10 years prior that they were just friends, but not, they didn't have romance, and they had different goals in life, like they just weren't, it wasn't working.
They had grown in different directions. So
and they are both still friends.
Mm-hmm.
They are both remarried and very happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, so I did see they had that, but I don't see it too often. Right?
That's reassuring to know that exists, though. I mean, I've seen
right.
too much of the other, so.
Right. It can happen. And, but with me, I felt like I went through a phase where I didn't care if I ever, had a relationship with another man again, right? Sure. It didn't last too long. But what I decided to do, and part of it was because I have people in my family, women in my family that have married and remarried and remarried and remarried. And I realized that people, they get a divorce or a breakup and their heart is broken and they right away get into another relationship, which often feels good because they're lonely and they're sad and it feels good to be, in love and having fun and all of that. And it's just a rebound relationship that often doesn't work because there was no real foundation of friendship or anything there. It was just happened fast. Yeah. I did not want to have that experience. So I made all my friends promise me that I said, look, if I come and tell you that I've went on a date and this guy is the best thing since sliced bread, like you just tell me no, like don't let me do that. And of course, most of my friends were trying, wanting me to date because they wanted me to have a relationship. But I spent quite a few years finding out who I was again.
Yeah.
I wrote a book. I remodeled a house. I took classes. I went back to school. I did all these things and I did them for me. And it was at that point. It was at that point where I was starting to feel really good about myself, about my accomplishments, about my life, about things going on, that he appeared.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't do any kind of online dating or anything like that. I just met him somewhere and it was meant to be. And it's been almost 10 years. So I think that the key there, because I've looked back, I'm a relationship coach. So I'm like, okay,
sure,
I'm in a really great relationship. So I can tell you how we work through things and how we navigate a great relationship. But I would look back in the beginning and think, but how did I get here? What did I do? What happened before that to go from the real pain of heartbreak and breakup to something else? What was in between? And that's what it was.
Yeah.
And I can point the self-love pointer at all those things that I did.
Absolutely.
There was an element of, I remember decorating a bedroom and realizing that I wasn't asking anyone else what color should it be or what should it, I was like, you know what? I'm going to make this bedroom for me.
Mm-hmm.
And there was kind of a turning point there. I was redecorating a house that was for sale and the realtor was saying, oh, you should do this and you should do that. And none of the things she was wanting me to do were things I wanted to do. And I just decided, no, I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to really enjoy myself and find out what I like. So if you do that, I think that's a big key. Respect. Respecting your own opinion, respecting your own thoughts, trusting your ideas. Those are all things that even a lot of times when people say they love themselves, they don't do those things.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, seriously, you would think that people who are deliberately focused on improving their relationship with themselves would have that part ironed out. But the truth of the matter is we all work on different things in a different order. We prioritize things differently. We think about things differently. And it's no wonder we end up kind of skipping areas, not intentionally, but we end up skipping areas.
Well, any coach will tell you, most coaches are familiar with the word gremlin. It's a word that we give to that little voice in your head. Some people call it the inner critic. Right? It's the voice that's always demeaning you or telling you that you can't trust yourself or whatever. And we all go through that because we grow up hearing lots of voices. And even if we had the most loving and wise and kind parents, some of us did not, some of us did, there's still lots of other influences in our life. There were neighbors and teachers and relatives and people that had ideas and things we heard on TV and lots of information coming at us about how things should be and how we should be and how what makes something right and wrong and perfect and trashy and whatever. And so we've got all these voices in our head, and it's when we learn to hear the voice of ourself, what I call my higher, wiser self, then we can start, recognizing self-love isn't just about going and getting a manicure and a massage.
It's a good start, but you don't want to stop there.
Well, self-care, that's pampering, and a lot of people stop there. And hey, I like to be pampered as much as anybody, but there's another level of self-love, and it's the intention of what we think about ourselves.
Because you do that a whole lot more in your day than you do lying on the massage table. I mean, how often does that happen? Not all that often, but thinking about yourself every single day practically.
So the support that I would throw out there, we talk about it a lot for anybody though that's working on self-love, is mirror work.
Oh, yes.
And I mean, there's science behind why this works. When we talk about mirror work, we are literally talking about looking into a mirror, looking into your own eyes, and saying, I love you. You did a great job today. You did the best you could today. Hey, today, even on the worst days, right? It's like, hey, today was a hard day, but you made it. So you're giving yourself a pep talk. Like, I often think it's like the way you would talk to a child that was having a bad day or a good day.
And it feels weird the first time you do it. So weird that the first day I couldn't do it for more than 3 seconds.
It probably feels weird the first week or so,
well,
right?
The first day was tough.
I remember you being like, I'm not going to give up, but this is terrible. I'm not going to give up.
Well, I almost did give up that first day. And the second day was about twice as easy. You're right, after about a week, it was no big deal at all. It did take a few days to kind of shed that old skin of, oh God, this feels so creepy.
So there's science that shows that hearing someone's voice it affects a different part of our brain than reading, let's say, a text message. And this is why if you've got, I certainly have offered plenty of support and encouraging messages via text message. I'm not saying not to do that.
Sure.
But if you can call, it's even better, right? Because it actually is the brain of the person you're speaking to is processing it in a different way, and it's in a way that supports them better. It's in a way where empathy is involved, which doesn't come across in a text. No matter how hard we try, it just doesn't. Our brain looks at it differently when we're reading words than when we're hearing words. So it's always better if we can. And then the mirror work, we're speaking out loud. So we're not only hearing our own voice saying, it's like, wow, part of our brain is like, oh, wow, we love ourselves.
How about that?
Hey, and then there are mirror neurons in the brain. So when a baby is first born, they have the ability to only see a very short distance, right? Like they say that a newborn baby can see the distance from nursing at the mother's breast to the mother's face. So maybe 10 inches, 8 inches, 12 inches, whatever, a little space. And then everything beyond that's kind of blurry.
Right.
So for their first weeks, their vision is a little bit short, very short. And then it gets wider. But what they can do even at that time of being such a newborn, is they are recognizing their mother's face, and they start to recognize other faces, and they recognize facial expression. And especially in little girls, it's a little bit more, brain scientists say, but they recognize whether the expression on someone's face is pleased or not pleased.
Yeah.
And so right away, we want to please our parents, and we are very, very perceptive, even as babies, about their facial expression, whether they are pleased or not.
Mm-hmm.
So I say this just because, those mirror neurons are very powerful. So think about when someone eats a lemon and their face scrunches up from the sour flavor and someone's watching them and they make the same face. Or how about when someone yawns?
Yeah.
You see them and then you start yawning too.
Right.
That is all attributed to this same thing going on. So when we look into a mirror and see our own face, that part of our brain is activated. It's the part that has empathy. It's the part that can be there with someone in whatever they're going through. It's not the same as sympathy. Right?
It's interesting that you say that too, because as I was thinking about my own mirror work, particularly that first week, I made it a point. I didn't have a clear idea why I made it a point, but I made it a point to look in the mirror and smile at myself.
Yeah. Yes.
That smile made it, first of all, it made it a whole lot easier to do the mirror work. But secondly, that smile gave me that reassurance that you're talking about. It was either the face of approval or the face of disapproval, and the smile was a face of approval, and it felt good.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's really important. I actually told myself that, when you're out somewhere and you see someone and you recognize them, oftentimes you'll both smile and sort of what I would call your face will light up, right? It's like, hey, how are you?
Exactly.
And so I told myself, whenever you see yourself in a mirror, you should do that.
Mm-hmm.
You should say, hey, good to see you. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that does sound, you're giggling because it sounds so uncomfortable, and at first it is uncomfortable, but it really does pay off in a big way. You talked about 10 minutes ago about those voices that have been in our heads for years, and they come from a variety of different sources, and they keep replaying over and over again. One of the most wonderful things, it's actually the reason why I chose to do mirror work in the first place, is when those voices go away.
Yeah.
They go away, and if you keep going with the mirror work, they go away permanently.
Well, I remember this because it's been well over a year, maybe close to 2, but I had heard Jack Canfield, right?
Yeah.
Yep. I had heard Jack Canfield say that the negative self-talk, the negative mental chatter in his head, that when he started doing mirror work for, I don't know, I think it was 25 days, that it stopped. And we were on air one day talking about mental chatter, and you were saying that you think that's really that was probably the worst thing for you when you first got into LOA, is just recognizing that there was this negative mental chatter going on all the time, and that it's draining and it's hard to deal with. And I remembered hearing him say that. And so we started talking about mirror work, and that's when you said, you know what, I'm going to do it because I will try anything like this if there's a promise that maybe it will stop the mental chatter. Now, I remember you reporting back, and I still use your story sometimes with clients. I do, because it was something that you said that was so powerful. You said the mental chatter is like the volume on it has turned down.
Yes.
And you said it's almost like when there's a TV on in the other room, and you can hear it, but it's not even interesting enough for you to try and hear what it's actually saying. It's just like, oh yeah, the TV's on. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's such a great way to describe it, because it's not like you'll automatically forget that anyone ever said any of those things to you.
No.
I have had people tell me of things that parents and teachers and this person, that person told them that were, to me, horrifying. To be an 11-year-old and have your teacher say, like, you'll never amount to anything or something like that. It's like, oh my goodness, really? But lots of people have had experiences like that, and they hear that voice over and over. It's not that you'll forget that anyone ever said it. That would be the best case scenario, and maybe that happens. But it's that you just don't care anymore. You don't have an emotional charge to it. It's like the volume is so far down. It's just, it's chatter. It's just, and you're not focused on it. And I still get excited when I think about that result you had, because that's amazing.
I get excited too for that exact reason. And not only did the volume go down, after about 30 days, it was nearly gone. At 40 days, it was gone.
Gone, yeah.
And I think I went 50 days and then stopped for a few months, and it started to trickle back a little bit. So I started doing the mirror work again. Yeah. It went away really quickly the second time because I had laid the groundwork, so to speak. And now I do it as needed. You know how you'll see a doctor and they'll say, take this as needed. Well, that's right. What I do. I do it as needed. And in fact, I started this about 2 or 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, something like that. I did a variation on it. And it's been my daily variation during this time. It's not just looking in the mirror and saying, I love you. It's looking in the mirror, smiling, and celebrating life. Yes, I love you. You are fabulous. I mean, just really going overboard, completely over the top. And I actually time myself now because...
Oh, yeah. How long are you doing this for?
This new version, I'm doing for 1 minute. That's it. Just 1 minute. Because 1 minute is exhausting.
Right?
Throwing that much energy into it, that much enthusiasm into it.
But, when you think about so many other... I don't even know what to call them, practices, I guess. So many other practices that we do to honor ourselves, to grow ourselves, to, bring more peace into our life, whatever they are. Some of them are 15 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like 1 minute to recognize that you can have a huge change in your life. And when you have that huge change, as within, so without. It's right. Everything outwardly starts to change as well. The way people perceive you change. The way people treat you changes. Mm-hmm. For 1 minute a day.
Yeah, that's a good trade. It's a really good trade.
Right.
And it has an amazing, when you do the overboard thing, it has an unexpected effect. It raises you to high vibe very fast.
And you said it lasts for a while.
It does. It'll last at least 5 to 10 minutes and usually longer. And you just feel that buzz throughout that time. Now, maybe if you're starting from a really low place, you're depressed or you're angry or, in one of the really low vibration places, maybe you'll only get a buzz for, 10, 15 seconds afterward. But if you keep doing it, it increases. It increases over time and it does it fairly quickly. I mean, a week or two later, all of a sudden you're really experiencing that high vibe that lasts. You say, whoa, this feels good.
Well, part of what you're doing, we were talking about the brain, and you start to grow new neural connections.
Yes.
So it's like anything. If you think about something that you've learned that was like learning how to type. Mm-hmm. It's slow at first, make a lot of mistakes, and now most of us just, I type really fast and I don't even think about it. Like it's just happening, right?
Right.
Because those neural connections have grown and they just wire and fire automatically now. It's like driving somewhere that you know how to get there. It's just easy. You don't have to think too much about it. So when you start doing this kind of mirror work every day, you actually start growing those neural connections. And then pretty soon, like you said, even when you let it go for a while, as soon as you started doing it again, it's kind of like they say about riding a bike, right? It's like riding a bike. You get right back on and it's like, oh, wow, I didn't know how to do this. That's that neural connection thing in your brain. You've already formed all those connections. And the other good thing about it is that we form connections for bad habits too.
Oh, yes.
But when we start to break those habits, those connections they disconnect from each other. And they do not fire together anymore. So
and as we establish the new connections, they start creating connections we like. That's one of the unexpected benefits of doing the mirror work. You do the mirror work long enough, and I'm not sure how long enough is, but let's just say about as long as I did it. How about that? And
just go for 30 days.
Yeah, 30 days is a nice round number. You certainly are going to experience a change in 30 days if you go the full 30. But after that 30-day period is up, you're going to find something interesting. You're going to find that some of your other behavior patterns with other people change. And not because you intended them to change, not because you set an intention and said, I want the law of attraction to... No, it's just you started changing the way that you were thinking about yourself through the mirror work, and it starts expressing itself. You start expressing yourself differently as a result when you're dealing with others.
And
you don't even know you're doing it. You just see the result.
I think it's interesting that it's mirror work using an actual mirror, because I always say that all of our relationships are mirrors, right?
True,
like
yes.
Everything happening outside of us is just a mirror to what's going on inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, you're right. Everything will change. And the thing I always think about with mirror work is, like some people like to write and some people don't. Mm-hmm. But even for people that really like to write, it's like, okay, writing in a journal 3 pages a day or 30 minutes a day or whatever, it takes some consistency and dedication. And yet, mirror work, most of us are in a mirror every morning. When we're brushing our teeth, washing our face, whatever, we're there in a mirror, putting in our contact lenses, whatever. And we're already there.
Right. And
usually it's in a private space. Mm-hmm. And this is only going to take a minute. And it doesn't have to make noise, because the first time you did the over-the-top version, Louise was asleep and you didn't want to wake her, so
That's right. It was a quiet celebration.
People that practice magic, there are certain incantations that are meant to be vibrated, which means you're really pulling it up from deep in your belly and projecting. And so you're really using volume. Mm-hmm. And people will tell you that practice that way, that if you can't do it, because some people are like that, when we do the mirror work, we're already there in the mirror. Hopefully everyone listening brushes their teeth every morning, washes their face. Please tell me that's true. So you're in a mirror for a little while, and that's a great time. And then, when you were talking about your over-the-top version of mirror work, the celebratory mirror work, where you're just like pumped up and you're just like, yes. And I was thinking about when you did this the first time that Louise was asleep and you didn't want to make the noise. Right. So you actually did it energetically and, pump your fist in the air, but you weren't, you maybe were imagining the words, but you weren't saying them out loud. And what I was mentioning was that, in ceremonial magic, there are incantations that are meant to be said to be what's called vibrated. So you're saying them with a lot of power and projecting and volume. And mm-hmm. people will say, well, I can't do that because I live with people that don't understand my practice, or that won't be cool, or, whatever. Yep. And so you can do those same things, and you're saying the word, like, imagine that you're saying a prayer or a meditation in your head, right? Like, even sometimes in a church service, the leader will say, just say this to yourself, right? So you're not saying it out loud. So whatever practice or religion or belief system, we all have these times when we're saying something quietly to ourselves.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And you can say these certain things that need to be vibrated quietly as far as outward noise, but in your imagination, saying them to yourself, you are imagining yourself vibrating them, saying them with great power at volume. And so you can do the same thing with this mirror work while you're celebrating. Sure. If you can't make the noise, don't let that stop you from doing waltz over the top celebratory mirror work. Just imagine yourself being really pumped up and happy and shouting and getting, excited.
In fact, I got support from Louise on this before I started doing the overtop thing, because the room where I do my podcast in is a second bedroom, so to speak, in the apartment. And the other bedroom is on the other side of the apartment. So we have a mirror on the wall next to the door to this bedroom. So all I have to do is just go over to where the door is, and it's a mirror right there for me to work with. Uh-huh. And it's there specifically for the purpose of doing mirror work.
Excellent.
So I can do it early in the morning and not wake her up. It's like I prepped for it. I prepared myself. I prepared my circumstances.
Yes. There's an idea that environment trumps intention. Mm-hmm. Right? And so I had a friend that really wanted to work out, had enrolled in a gym and was doing well with it. But then every month he would go out of town and travel for a few days. And then when he would come back, just that whole reentry period of time of trying to get back into the swing of things, and he never would want to get up at early and head off to the gym, and so he wouldn't. And then he would lose his momentum. It happened over and over.
Mm-hmm.
And so he actually hired someone to come to him to train him where he was.
Mm-hmm.
So he created an environment that would work for him.
Right.
Right. And so our intention is important, but then we have to create an environment where we can actually do the thing. And that's what you did by getting prepared, putting the mirror where you needed it. You know, you did all that. You only had to do it once, and now it's ready for you. Yeah. Right. It's like, so I know for me, you know, the Charlie Brown comic,
mm-hmm.
there's a little guy named Pigpen.
Oh yeah.
And everywhere he goes, there's like a cloud of dust around him.
Right.
Everywhere I go, there are stacks of books. Like they follow me around. Books and notebooks are everywhere. And I like to buy beautiful notebooks and books. So my clutter is really cute.
Sure.
But it's still energetically, it just gets in the way.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that when I need to be really productive, the best thing I can do is clean my desk, clean my office or whatever working space. If I'm in art studio, clean the space. Why? Because the environment needs to support your intention.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
An environment that doesn't support your intention, it's not going to work. So that's why I'm giving you these tips about being able to still do this if you need to be quiet, not let your environment trump that intention. Say, well, I would love to do this, but I can't because I'll wake people up.
Well, plus if you're walking into it the way I did those first few days where I felt really uncomfortable, you know, talking into the mirror, the last thing I wanted was to have somebody watching me talking into the mirror. So that was another reason to have it in a place where I could close the door. Nobody else could see me.
Right.
It was just me in the mirror. And then the only thing I had to deal with at that point was, okay, Walt, you actually have to talk to yourself in the mirror.
Yes. But I love your idea that smiling is so important.
It's literally an icebreaker with yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, it breaks that place of being so uncomfortable. When you smile, it doesn't break it completely, but it breaks it up. It shifts it so that now you can do it, and a moment ago you couldn't do it. You know,
one of the things I think that we all need, and especially right now, is kindness.
Mm.
Kindness goes a long way. I remember that somebody had met my son, my sons are grown and out on their own, but someone had met one of my sons and then met me later and then found out, oh, this was your son. I met your son. I know him. And I said, oh, and they said to me, he is so kind.
Aww.
And that was like the best compliment you could give me, right? Mm-hmm. Is that, I mean, because I hope I raised kids that are kind, and I know that I did because people say that about them. But we forget sometimes that kindness is really powerful, mm-hmm. right? It's more powerful than we want to think about ourselves and think about our accomplishments and, you know, maybe big important things that we've done and talents that we have and qualities that are so great. But kindness is going to affect other people in our lives probably more than any of the gifts and talents that we have, just being kind. And so when you show up at the mirror, if you can't do anything else, like, you know, it's great to praise yourself in the mirror and tell yourself you did a great job and, hey, that project you're working on is awesome and boy, aren't you something. But you don't have to do any of that. Just show up with the intention to give yourself some kindness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. And I would add to it, it's about being kind rather than nice.
Big difference.
We often confuse the two, but they're not the same thing. Kindness is a different quality. It's a different feeling.
Kindness is always appropriate, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Being nice is not always appropriate.
Mm.
And, you know, oftentimes being nice is actually not speaking up when you probably would do better to speak up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just it's not necessary. But kindness is something different. You're right. And so show up to the mirror with the intention of loving yourself and being kind. And be kind to yourself.
Yeah, it pays.
You know, everyone is doing the best they can. right? And so if we recognize that to ourselves in the mirror, we're doing the best we can. Tomorrow's another day, you know? You did fine. You're going to be okay. I remember I've told this story before, but I was going through a really difficult period in 2008, and I was just distraught. And my coach at the time was a little bit lost, and seeing me so distraught and not really knowing how to fix it or how to help or what to say.
Yeah.
And she did a really wise thing. She said, what can I say? What could I say to you right now that would help you feel better?
Mm.
And I said, I guess I just need somebody to tell me everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And she said, everything's going to be okay. And it's so funny when I tell the story, I always think, gosh, you know, why was that so powerful?
But it is.
But it was so powerful for my ears, my physical ears, to hear a voice telling me it's going to be okay. And you can do that for yourself. You
Sure.
can look into the mirror, and if that's all you've got on the worst day ever is to look at yourself and say,
Yeah.
this too shall pass, you're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
I've got your back, right? That's the kindness that will carry you through. And on the best day, just get in that mirror and celebrate.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Take advantage of the celebration opportunities. Don't miss those. Louis D'Souza uses a phrase that I was a little lukewarm to at first, but I've come to like it. It's his way of reminding himself that no matter what's going on right now, he doesn't have to be attached to it, even if it's something that he really doesn't like. And that is, if not this, something better.
Yeah. Right.
Right?
Yeah. My earliest mentor had a phrase. I'm trying to remember it now. This, the equivalent, or whatever would be better.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as far as like deciding upon something, right? Affirming something.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I want this, or its equivalent, or whatever would be better.
So if you're looking in the mirror and you're doing the mirror work, and like Cindy was saying, you're running out of things, you just, there's nothing to say, then you can say, well, if not this, something better, please. and
Right?
say it with meaning and with feeling and with a smile, and it makes a difference.
Yeah. And, you know, it's kind of like the way, I think we said this before, but the way you would talk to a child that was having a bad day, or the way you would talk to a child that was having a good day, that you just wanted to show them that you care about them and you love them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you're talking to a little child, we're not worried about the words or how eloquent you are or articulate or what great thing you can say. You just tell them, you know, I love you. I hope you have a great day today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
That's all it takes.
All it is. That's all it is.
I want to mention one other thing about mirror work. A while back, one of my co-hosts was Anne-Marie McEwen, Kanata McEwen, actually now just Anne-Marie McEwen, and her husband Mike also co-hosted a few times. And Mike heard one of our early shows talking about mirror work and heard about my success and decided to start doing it. And he actually came on and did a show with me where he told about his success mirroring my success doing mirror work. If you can say that one. And
that's like one of those mirrors where the reflection.
That's right. Yeah.
Come back, make it a tunnel.
It's like a three-way mirror or something. But he, to this day, every time I see him, he'll say something like, you know, I'm so glad you told me about the mirror work, because he does it faithfully. He's more faithful about it than I am.
That's amazing. I'm so glad you told me that.
Yeah. And he has apparently a lot of stuff, a lot of voices that have played in his head, a lot of anger points and things like that. And they still crop up, but they crop up a lot less frequently with a lot less power. And he finds that the mirror work allows him to let go of them in ways that he couldn't let go of them before. So it may not be eliminating them, but it gives him a way to manage them and put them where they need to be, out of the way.
Well, I mean, I think that that's a really good point to make, because we often don't eliminate all the, you know, quote, quote, bad things, the painful things, the hard things. We live on Earth, and sometimes life on Earth is painful. But all of these tools that we have are ways to help us navigate them in a way that makes it better. I think that's important to recognize.
It is. It's very important. Something I want to tell people, first of all, the app Half the app is out. If you're a Mac listener or a PC listener, you listen on your Mac or your PC, that app is available. Go to loatoday.net. You will now see a download link for that. And if you need instructions, it will walk you through. There's a little link you can click on to get instructions step by step on how to install it. The Android and iPhone versions are still in development. I'm really close. I keep been saying that for weeks now, but I really am close. And I talked at the top of the show about how I may have gotten the idea on what it's going to take. But anyway, that's about to come out. Also, and Cindy, I don't know if you know about this one. I think I told you a little bit last week. We had a guest come on last Tuesday who is a channeler. He channels like Abraham Hicks. His particular non-physical being group is called The Stream. His name is David Strickle, and David came back on Friday, did another show with us. And then over the last few days, we've come to agreement. He is now going to join us regularly on Tuesdays.
Oh, wow.
So he's going to be part of the cast with Dave Mangena and Alex King and me on Tuesdays.
I might have to call in.
I wanted to let you know about that. Louis D'Souza, he's a big Abraham follower, so he's really curious about jumping in. And I wanted to invite you to jump in. Feel free to tune in, obviously, but also feel free to jump in on the Zoom platform.
Okay, that'd be fun. I'll have to do that.
So that will start. That will not start next week. It'll start the following week. So July 14th is when that's going to start.
I'll make a note.
So yeah, and all of our listeners, same thing. If you have questions, first of all, a lot of our listeners, the overwhelming majority of our listeners cannot be here when we're doing the recordings. That's why we do podcasts. But if you want to have your questions included, send me an email, walt@loatoday.net, and I will add your question to the list, and I'll make sure that your question gets addressed, because that's why we're having David channel The Stream. And it's an interesting experience. It's an exciting experience, Cindy, because Dan Mangena pointed this out the first day that he was here, that David was here. When David shifts over, you know how Esther will do her little shift to start channeling, or to start receiving Abraham. He does the same thing with The Stream. And when The Stream comes on, there was a visceral lifting of energy. It was like energy, the vibe in the podcast went up 5 levels all at once. And it knocked me off my game. I forgot what my first question is. But, I got past that part. But it was cool. It was fun to feel that energy. It was very exciting.
So write your questions down.
Absolutely, yes.
The energy knocks you off your game. You want to be able to remember what you want to ask.
The first one got it going. After, it's like when we do a show, how are we going to start it? It was the same thing. Once I got the first question out, then I had a million of them. But it was the first one that was the tough part. It's like doing the mirror work the first time.
Right. That's great. Excellent.
Just wanted to make sure everybody knew about that. That is happening. There will be more information coming in the weeks to come. But in the meantime, this has been great. Thank you so much once again for your insight. I love the fact you're the one who took this into mirror work today. And I love that you chose to do that off this post that we saw, because I don't talk about it enough. And I'm glad that we went there.
Yeah. Self-love. It's the number one tool that I recommend to people for that.
It's a great one. There's no doubt about it. So thank you very much. Thank you, live streamers. Thank you especially to our podcast listeners as well. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.